Proszę Państwa, teraz zagłębimy się troszeczkę w przestrzeń teatru politycznego dzięki Darii Iwanowej. Z Darią znamy się od 6 lat już, 2016 rok, kiedy przyjechała, tak jak Marzenna wspomniała, z wykładem poświęconym kształtowaniu się małych zespołów teatralnych i wchodzeniu ich na rynek w Ukrainie, na taki rynek niezależny i także zmianie modelu kształcenia wówczas w szkole teatralnej w Kijowie, właśnie pod kątem tych osób, które nie mogą znajdować miejsca w instytucjonalnych teatrach, ale też taką zmianą, która szła w kierunku bardzo dużego eksperymentowania na poziomie spektakli dyplomowych, które właśnie później mogli absolwenci za niewielkie pieniądze odkupić od szkoły i mieć ten swój pierwszy spektakl, z którym wchodzili po prostu na rynek. Dzisiaj Daria opowie Państwu o teatrze politycznym, teatrze, którego nazwa to rewolucyjny teatr wertepu, a mieści się w Wyższej Szkole Artystyczno-Ceramicznej Mezhyhirya. If I understand well, Mezhyhirya is also the house of Viktor Yanukovych, yes or no? Yeah, okay. Zatem ta szkoła w tym momencie mieści się w tej niezwykle luksusowej rezydencji byłego prezydenta Ukrainy Wiktora Janukowicza, odebranej mu po pomarańczowej rewolucji w 2014 roku, gdzie poza wspomnianą przed chwilą szkołą mieści się także muzeum. Ja udostępniam w tym momencie swój ekran, a Darii mówię: Daria, this virtual stage is yours. Please start yours.
Good evening, dear colleagues. Do you hear me well?
Well.
Okay. Good evening, dear colleagues, dear friends, dear puppeteers. First of all, let me thank all of you for your warm support of Ukraine and of Ukrainian people. In these dark times of our history, I want to thank all the Polish people and all the politicians, all the men, women, and children who give us hope for the future, and of course to thanks to Academy Alexander Zelverovich and branch in Białystok and Humanitary Faculty of University named after Nicolaus Copernicus, to Marzenna, to Karol, to Artur for this initiative, because we are for 1 month in isolation without our profession, and thank you for this opportunity to stay in a theater deals, theater news, because now we in Ukraine, instead of theater, we have only a theater of war actions. But lives go on and we have to go on, and I want to congratulate all of you with the World Puppetry Day, which was 21st of March, and with International Theatre Day, which was yesterday. And I'm sorry, taking this opportunity, I want to congratulate my husband with his birthday. Today is his birthday, but we are far from each other because of war, and we are forced to be in different places, and we are praying for our independent European future in the free countries. And taking this opportunity, I want to wish all the Ukrainian families who are separated by kilometers to unite as fast as it's possible in our European free Ukraine. And I want to underline, Marzenna at the beginning said that I am in Kyiv. Now I'm in a road in a more safety place, but my husband is almost near to Mezhyhirya. I will be talking today about this region, and I want to think that it's very dangerous now because it's in a threat of Russian troops, but I invite you to the beginning of 1920s in Ukraine. Well, in 1920s, 1930s, the professional theater in Ukraine, and particularly in Kyiv, was developing rapidly. Lots of amateur and professional puppetry groups were created, and their activity had a major impact on general professionalization of Ukrainian puppetry art. The one of the remarkable theater of puppetry art in Kyiv was revolutionary vertep, which was organized in Art and Ceramic College of Mezhyhirya in 1923. As Karol already said, Mezhyhirya is a location well known as a fashionable luxury house and even a palace of our former president Viktor Yanukovych. But now there is a big and a beautiful national park, and after the finish of this war, welcome you in Ukraine in such beautiful landscapes which we have in Ukraine very much. The specificity of the theater was determined by its origin as a student theater, and it had a large contribution in further development of the professional theater, puppet theater in Ukraine. Its specificity was also determined by choosing direction of activity as agitation theater. And this fact was a reason for scientists to distinguish this group as separate kind of Soviet agitation and political puppet theater. It should be stated that agitation theater is one of the most important part of foundation of professional puppet theater in the decade 1920s, 1930s. During this decade, agitation direction of the theater had a great influence on the process of Ukrainian puppetry art foundation. Agitation vector of theater was determined by political changes connected with events of October Revolution of 1917 and authority gained by communistic party and communistic regime in Ukraine in Soviet Union. In accordance with the needs of the time, every professional and amateur puppet theater group, despite its nature and ideological and aesthetic platform, was obligated to have performances that were revolutionarily consonant. This term was a period in 1920s that was connected with absence of a new place that would show the reality of these times and staging of the classical repertoire with appropriate accents. The staging of such performances, revolutionary performances, was usually performed in two ways. The first one was interpretation of classical works in accordance to the needs of these times. The best example of such approach to staging new political shows, it's a fairy tale by Alexander Pushkin, fairy tale about the priest and his worker. And accents were made in such way that this fairy tale, well-known fairy tale by Alexander Pushkin, became a part of anti-religion campaign in 1920s. And the second variant or approach for creating and staging agitation plays, which shown modern running topics of social and political life of the country and the whole world. Running topics, it means political and social events which had place in that times. In contrast to newly created theaters of puppets in 1920s, 1930s, for whom the work with agitation drama was only a stage, was only a step in their professional growth, revolutionary vertep had chosen this path as its main vector of development. This decision had an influence, a great influence, on theater's way of activity, repertoire politic, and as a result on expressive means and forms of theater's activities. Revolutionary vertep as agitation theater was intended to perform social demand of Soviet government and Communistic Party. The creation of the right ideological view on country's life for children and for adults that were the main viewers of this theater. In the history of creation of revolutionary vertep, the names of its founders should be stated. First of all, we should to say a few words about Pavlo Horbenko. Pavlo Horbenko was a teacher and professor in Art and Ceramic College of Mezhyhirya, and he was the main inspirator of this process. And Tivchinsky, it's a surname of well-known student and a future well-known puppeteer and actor and director. It's complicated to get know exactly his name, because in periodical of 1920 we have only N. Tivchinsky. He could be Nikolai, he could be Nikifor and others, but we know his well-known surname, second name is Tivchinsky. And Evgeny Sagaidachny, it was a professor of sculpture design, and he helps his students and the puppeteers to create their first puppets in this theater. It would seem that this theater can be classified as one of the revolutionary theaters that were appearing and disappearing in 1920s in Ukraine with the speed that can be compared only with the speed of power change in Ukraine at that period of time, because it was red party, white party, it was anarchios for a few days. It was very fast changes of the power, and many theaters was appeared and disappeared. Now I kindly ask Karol to show the second, third, and fourth slides. Thus, among numerous troms, theaters of working youth, and koms, theaters of kolkhoz youth, agitation groups of workers, mobile theaters that were usually called downstream, professional theater, the Students' Revolutionary Vertep, imagined as a part of Art and Ceramic College of Mezhyhirya. Apparently, its occurrence was determined by needs of these times. However, it can be safely said that it was a unique phenomenon which manifested itself in original format of organization and demonstration of performances as a puppet vertep, one of the oldest theater types in Ukraine, known since 16th century. Karol, you can say, you can show the third. Here's a post of one of the trom. Trom is translated as a theater of worker youth. And the next slide is one of the piece of the shows that were organized in that time. Now I want to ask you about the sixth slide. You can just scroll very slowly. 6, 7, 8, and 9. It's necessary to say a few words about such form of puppet theater as vertep. All of you know Shopka, know Batleika, Retablo, and know vertep. But I want to underline the main things of this kind puppetry theater. Vertep translated as a cave, a place where a place of Jesus' birth, according to the biblical legend. It's a national Christmas puppet theater in Ukraine. It looked as a two-level chest or a little wardrobe. You can see it could be with doors or it could be without doors, in which short scenes with puppets were performed. The vertep chest is designed with a lot of holes in the floor through which puppets were manipulated with use of wires or so-called vertep puppets. The division of the chest in two parts or in two floors is very important. The top or saint level served for the playing of Jesus Christ birth legend. On the saint floor could be only Holy Family and Max. The puppets used for this part of performances were static and almost never moved. The bottom, the second floor, the bottom or public level was used to present scenes from the social routine life of Ukrainians. Puppets used in this part were very dynamic, often used in scenes with dance and singing. I want to underline that the main character of Ukraine, or puppet character of Ukraine, is a Cossack. It's a warriors, and he is defender and saver. And today, in the last video, you will see a new variant of our national hero Cossack. And Cossack was a star of the second part of the vertep drama. He was dancing, he was playing on the second or on the folklore floor. You can see him now in this slide. Thank you, Karol, in the center of the stage. Therefore, the creators of revolutionary vertep turned to the idea to revive the unsigned form of Ukrainian puppet theater. It should be stated that unsigned or folklore forms of the theater were addressed by theater groups of agitation direction in 1920s, 1930s. However, most of the first professional puppet theater in Ukraine, which exists till nowadays, even our Kyiv Academic Puppet Theater in 1920s, 1930s, usually used classical public puppet theater form, so-called Petrushka. Petrushka is a theater of gloves puppet. To develop the art of puppetry and to develop the agitation puppet theater. In contrast, revolutionary vertep was the only group in Soviet Union which used the vertep form of theater and worked with vertep puppets. Due to their forces, the vertep puppet theater was saved, and we have its example till nowadays in professional puppetry art of Ukraine. Really, the vertep as a form of unsigned theater in Ukraine could guarantee the originality of theater's performances. However, the originality was not a goal for creators of revolutionary vertep. First of all, as agitation theater, revolutionary vertep had to cover the largest possible audience of urban areas with the largest possible numbers of performances. Regarding this, the creators of revolutionary vertep turned to vertep form as unsigned form of puppet theater was originally aimed to the masses, to the big audience group. It should be stated that possibility to attract big audience was always typical for the vertep. As one of the types of folklore theater, vertep has significantly, it is connected with a format which was usually used to organize vertep performances, so-called open type or open air, how we can say today, open type performances in open spaces, squares, marks, fairs, and so on. This form of organization allowed to demonstrate vertep performances to the large number of spectators at once. Thus, during the performance, revolutionary vertep had a change to gather at least 200 people, sometimes up to the 300. Neither of Ukraine agitation puppet theater group of that period could not reach such a numerous audience. Developing distinctive tradition of vertep theater, revolutionary vertep used another feature of this type of theater, its mobility, and it became the main organizational principle of its activity. Historically, we know that puppet theater vertep, it's a traveling theater. It had never had a special house, a special stage. It always was in an open space. This specific nature of the performance organization is explained by historical facts that shaped this type of theater. It's known that vertep theater traditions are closely connected with Christmas and Christianity. This resulted in a very short year-allowed period of time during which performance can be played. This period was strictly regulated. Vertep performances were allowed only during 1 month period of New Year and Christmas holiday, from 19th of December, the day of Saint Nicolaus in Ukraine, till 19th of January, the celebration of Holy Epiphany, only for 1 month. In this regard, it's clear that the objective of vertep players was to serve the largest possible number of Europe's in a certain time. As follows, the puppet theater of vertep type was formed not as a stationary theater, but as mobile puppet theater that performed on fairs, town and village squares on holidays. Now I want to ask Karol to show the 14th slide. 14. Thank you. Another fact that deserves special attention is that the chosen form of vertep theater obligate revolutionary vertep to work with specific puppet type, the vertep puppet. Here you can see on the slide the stages and the steps of creating such kind of puppet. We call it vertep puppet in Ukraine or stock puppet, because this rod or this wire we call in professional puppet theater in Ukraine stock. So the vertep type of theater was chosen by revolutionary vertep as a base of its activity, and the usage of vertep puppet became the unique phenomenon in the theater development process in Ukraine at the beginning of 20th century. As vertep puppet has its own unique material and artistic anatomy, it was separated into independent control system of theater puppets. The specific and technical specification of this system required wooden or in nowadays iron wire or rod, which established the body of the puppet, which was used by an actor to move the puppet. This rod or this wire allowed puppet to move through the holes in the floors of vertep chest on the first and on the second floor. I want to ask you about the 5th slide, 5. Regarding the vertep system of a puppet, it is essential to notice that among all of existing system of puppet control, glove puppets, marionettes, rod puppets, shadow puppets, planchette, and others, vertep puppet is the most fixed, poorest for movement, freedom, unsigned puppetry system. The static type of a puppet is connected with a medieval theater tradition of unmoving puppets demonstration in Christmas panoramas that were placed in Christian churches and cathedrals. These figures were intended to show static scenes that illustrated biblical legend of Jesus Christ's birth. In order to diverse poses, gests, and action of puppet, it gradually received movement possibilities. However, usually only separate parts of puppet body received that possibility to perform one physical action. For example, tilting the head to worship of Christ child, or drawing head to raise the gifts to him. Undoubtedly, the static nature of the system is preserved in the vertep puppet system till nowadays, which is manifested in schematic and straight movements and gests and action, and also extraordinarity convention in which necessary content was coded along with the substance of particular puppet. it should be stated that organizers, actors, and directors of revolutionary vertep discovered totally such kind of puppet as vertep puppet, and the workout principles of vertep puppet manipulation designed by actors of revolutionary vertep during their long-lasting stage practice soon became strong canons for professional puppet theater groups of the future generations of Ukraine. I should say that our students on our department in Kyiv National University Karpenko-Kary studied such kind of puppet on the second course, and according to educational program, each acting course should to create classical vertep Christmas play, the first part and the second part, the saint part and the folk. And if directors of that course want to try their forces to create a new version of the second part with a new maybe political or social events, it could be, but after the creating the classical first and second part of vertep drama. As a creative core of revolutionary vertep were professional artists, teachers, and students of Art and Ceramic College of Mezhyhirya, it's obvious puppet was not only interesting for them from the revival point of view, but also as an object for the new artist's images. The puppet creation process was regarded by artists of revolutionary vertep considering deep knowledges of laws of sculpture, painting, and composition. Giant artists, sculpture, and decoration skills were also important aspects in puppetry manufacturing. Undoubtedly, it was a very positive moment in the professionalization of Ukrainian theater, puppet theater, as it became one of the first examples of engaging professional artists into development of puppet theater in Ukraine. It's important to notice the beginning stage of puppets manufacturing in revolutionary vertep. On this stage, artists aim to work on summarized conventional image of puppets, striving to lay this convention in sculpture design of the puppet. It should be also stated that this stage is characterized not by manufacturing particular puppets for particular performances, but all the efforts were directed at development of the blank puppet. Blank puppets were made of plaster or creative papier-mâché for the future playable theater puppet. It's known from the puppet theater history that in 16th and 17th centuries, the vertep puppet's creation was usually based on Ukrainian sculpture. This tradition was continued by artists of revolutionary vertep, which also were trying to find the basis for the puppet character sculpture in traditional sculpture. This basis was found not in Ukrainian sculpture, but in assemblies of so-called African sculpture. Karol, I want to ask you to show 19, 20, and 21st slide. Here you can see the examples, the samples of the heads of the puppets that were created by artists of revolutionary vertep. They are preserved in our Kyiv Museum of Theater, Cinema, and Musical Art. And in these heads, you can see the motif of African sculpture. And the next slide is underline this point of view. And there is need to explain the choice of African sculpture. Why African when they can take any country, any cultural region, or Ukrainian national sculpture. Choice of African sculpture as a template for plastic solution of puppet characters. This sculpture type is characterized by convention, schematization, styling, and combining a realistic manner of appearance with fantastic, grotesque trails. Such artist features were necessary for plastic solution of blank puppets used in agitation puppetry performance. In the future agitation activities, such kind of sculpture will be very welcomed and useful for revolutionary vertep theater. This approach to puppet manufacturing appeared to be very constructive for a theater practice, as agitation direction of the theater demanded almost light and fast reaction to all the events, changes in social and political life of the country and all over the world. In this regard, theater was obligated, one more time, theater was obligated to constantly update the diverse composition of puppet characters in order to ensure the actuality of theater performances. However, in contrast to dramatic theater, which was performing the same agitation objectives in that times, where the actor or actress could play different roles by only expressive means of his or her body or voice, puppet theater, including revolutionary vertep, was obligated to create a separate puppet for each role. This objective required lots of time, and this created a significant problem, as historical material which was based on particular political events may lose its actuality shortly. They have to light fast reaction on all the political and social events in Ukraine and all over the world. I want to ask Karol about 15 slide. 15, thank you. Yes, here's images of main characters of repertoire of revolutionary vertep. You can see that all of them are wrought puppets. As manufacturing of particular puppet took a lot of time in order to solve this problem, the participant of revolutionary vertep implemented a possibility to use one puppet for different roles. The convention and schematic image of the puppet, which were laid at the early stage of the production, when the blank puppet was made, became very, very useful. Thus, as part of player theater, had few distinctive puppet characters, which, thanks to their convention and schematic image, were able to be used for more than one role, even in one performance, providing mobility and relevance of the repertoire. I want to ask Karol the next slide, 16. Yeah. Thus, this is one of the famous puppet character in revolutionary vertep. One puppet with a long face and monocle in its eyes was first used for play role of British Lord Curzon. But when this historical figure left the political arena, this puppet was used to play the role of Lord Chamberlain. Please send the next. Yes, here I invite you to compare his real photos with the puppet image. And the actors and the artists of revolutionary vertep has very bad, I think, very bad quality photograph from the newspapers. I'm sure that nobody of them saw Chamberlain in reality, and they tried to make this this puppet, even tried to make a replica of his well-known head and his monocle, traditional British suit, and also such prop as a bag with historical documents. But firstly, it was a Lord Curzon, then it became a Chamberlain. The next puppet, it's a pity, but it was lost. But we have a description of this puppet. Among other puppet was image of fatty puppet with a French beard, which was used to play the roles of French politicians such as Poincaré. In the arsenal of the theater was also a puppet that was used to play the role of German diplomats, which, according to image, was fat and without mustache and beard. You can find one of these puppet on the previous slide. on the previous slide. We do not have the this puppet, but we can talk that this German puppet is the right one. It's also excuse me. We do not have the schematic image of this puppet, but it's very important for story of Russia Empire and for Ukrainian and for former Soviet Union. I want to show the 18th slide where you can recognize well-known historical figure. It's a king. And one more time, this puppet that you see on the upper side of the picture, this king could be a Russian Tsar, Nicolaus II, and it could be an English king in the same performance. And downstairs you can compare the British King Georg and Nicolaus II. They were close relatives in life. That's why our friends from Revolutionary Vertep decided to make just a one Tsar or king for playing this role. You can recognize him by a crown and by a character mantle. It's also noticeable that that in its practice, Revolutionary Vertep was not concentrated only on usage of expressive means of Vertep puppet. Also, they used shadow puppets, and a few times they used glove puppets. But it's a pity we have no pictures of these puppets. We have only describing in a manuscripts of participant and organizer of this theater. But about shadow puppets, I will tell you in the context of a repertoire of this theater. Well, about repertoire. Repertoire is one of the interesting, and I am sure that one of the controversial thing in the history of this theater. I should underline that Pavlo Gorbenko, as a teacher, as a professor, and young students, they trust in new ideas of communistic party and Soviet regime. They was not a servers of this regime. They trust and believe that it will be a bright future for their country and that it will be a right way, political and social way for their people. And that's why all their repertoire, it was very, agitation, and also they had a few plays in a frame of anti-religion company. For nowadays, for today's people, it's a terrible. But I want to share that it was their clear faith in a new ideas of the Soviet Union. Wow. It's clear that agitation direction of the theater determines the choice of topics, problems, and conflicts that were implemented in performances of Revolutionary Vertep. Mainly, the source of drama for the theater was in newspapers and journals, which covered political and social events in Ukraine and all over the world. Based on the articles of a news, a particular agitation sketches were created. As a rule, all the sketches were finished by singing the Third International. And during this song, all the bad characters, they were dying, of course. The performance will more look like the political news, but with using puppets. However, the theater has also its own independent play called Свято в раю. Свято в раю is translated as the holiday in paradise. I want to say that it was there is no concrete author of this play, but this play was published in 1924 in a very small book. It's titled Revolutionary Puppetry Theater, and the author is Pavlo Gorbenko, professor of this college. And if you will be interested, I can send you the scanned copy of this book, because there are many interesting historical facts of Ukrainian puppet theater and on aesthetic of puppet theater on a view of Pavlo Gorbenko. I want to ask Karol the 21st slide. 20 seconds, excuse me. Yes. The title vertep do not obligate creators of revolutionary vertep to provide Christianity plots and to show the performances about Jesus Christ's birthday. They refused of the second holy or saint floor of vertep chest. I want to ask you about 23 slide. Yes, here you can see the image from our museum in Kyiv of theater, cinema, and musical art. You can see and compare with the classical two-level chest that in revolutionary vertep there was only one floor, and the organizers of the theater they had been playing whole the year, not only in a Christmas and New Year time. And about Holiday in a Paradise. The play was created as a part of anti-religion campaign. The main characters of the play are shown in a very negative way. I want to say that the main characters of this show were God, Saint Michel, and other priests that are drinking, dancing, singing in heaven, and selling the best place in heaven for peoples for alcohol drinks. It was a part of anti-religion campaign, and the main goal of this play was to refuse the church attendance. That people, just adults especially, review this show and decided to refuse attending the churches, the cathedrals, and to go to Soviet meetings, Soviet parties, and so on. This was not a single example of usage of puppet theater expressive means to achieve new ideas that were propagated by Soviet government. For example, such episode with a shadow puppets survived among the achievements of revolutionary vertep. As I said, the organizers and actors and directors of this theater, they used shadow puppets, silhouette puppets too. They didn't have a special screen. They used only a big piece of white fabric, even without special equipment for fix it. Only two students standing before the vertep chest, just holding this piece of fabric, and from other side the silhouette puppets was performed. We called in our Ukrainian theater studies this sketch as a scene with a Red Army soldier. According to the plot of this sketch, they were performed a church and a Soviet library. Soviet library was called of Izba Chitальня, the place for Soviet meeting for people. And in the center of this play were peoples of different ages, youth, old people, and even children. And from the one side, the priest appeared and invited people to go to attend the church. And from the another side, from the Soviet library, appeared the Red Army soldier, and he invited people to go to the Soviet meeting. And firstly, the youth and children go to the Soviet library, And then old people who always were involved in Christianity process and attending the churches, they following the Red Army soldier, and priests stay just alone. And we know that the anti-religion campaign in Soviet Union was too dramatic and too tragic, and many serious priests were killed and were dying, and many churches and cathedrals were totally destroyed and were not rebuilt in modern times. Well, unfortunately, no data of concrete chronological frame of existence of the theater survive. However, based on the evidence from its organizers and participants, it can be assumed that scenic practice of the theater lasts for about 2 years, from 1923 to 1925. It's also supported by information from the Ukrainian periodical of 1920s. The explanation of termination of the activity of revolutionary vertep can be found in manuscripts of leading actor Suszczyński, who admits that reasons were purely objective. It was connected with the fact that creative core of the theater was composed by students of Art and Ceramic College of Mezhyhirya, who after finishing and after graduating go to the place of their direct job factories. However, despite, I want to underline another version why this theater has so short history. At the beginning of 1925, this theater had a tour to the Poltava, to the Zhytomyr and other cities of north and east of Ukraine, and the final point of this tour was Kharkov. Kharkov, as Yulia said, it was a very strong and very serious cultural center. Was for a few years it was a capital of Soviet Ukraine, and after the review of the shows, even such agitation shows, the politicians and ideological workers, they said that such unsigned and old kind of puppetry art is not interesting for spectators in epoch of electricity and cinematography. But I want to say that meanwhile, the Russian puppet theater Petrushka of glove puppet was blooming, and it was one of the first performances which were addressed each theater which was open in the same time. We can say that vertep was forbidden and cancelled, but Petrushka was playing all over the Ukraine, just to compare these two positions. However, despite the short term of existence, revolutionary vertep laid a foundation of professional puppet theater in Ukraine. Despite the short term of existence, creative achievements of revolutionary vertep theater had a significant influence on formation of professional puppet theater in Ukraine. In particular, the artistic and technological basic of professional puppet theater were worked out during the stage practice. Due to their practice, the technology of different system puppet manufacturing was worked out. The practical skills of puppetry were gained. The laws of manipulation of different types of puppets were developed. The first attempts to create puppetry dramaturgy were made and even were published in 1924. And now I want to ask Karol to show slowly 26 slides. Yes, 26. Here is a map of a Kyiv region in Vyshgorod district, where this puppet theater was founded in 1923. these red zones, it's Russian troops on Ukrainian land. And the surrounding villages as Lutish, Demidiv, Ivankov, Makarov, they are in humanitarian catastrophe. People in these villages, they have no food, they have no medicine, no heating, no gas, and no water. And I think that if now this revolutionary vertep exists, we even do not need to read the news from newspapers and journals. People and puppeteers, if they will be alive, they should only to look through their windows and to see the Russian piece. I want to ask Karol to show the next slide and the next one. I choose only two of them. I think that Yulia showed enough images of nowadays in Ukraine. And today, all Ukrainian puppeteers even do not need newspapers and magazines to create their current political sketches. All this can be seen through the windows of the homes. I'm sure that political puppet theater based on such tragic, dramatic, but also a very rich historical material will get its sound after our victory. The next slide. Always at the nice Andrew's descent in Kyiv, on the famous souvenir alley, funny matryoshka dolls, the next slide, with famous political and ideological figures of past and present were sold. They were usually bought by foreign tourists, but no one could have imagined that funny dolls, funny matryoshka, and their images themselves would become cruel, bloody puppeteers of the world. The second slide, please. For a few years ago, it was very funny. Now it's our main puppeteer of the world. What would be the heroes of today's performances of the theater revolutionary vertep? I think that all the politicians of nowadays, such as the next slide, Boris Johnson, such as Biden, Macron, and Scholz, they will have their images on a puppetry stage. And I want to ask Karol about the next pictures. Yes. As in 1920s, now Ukrainians, we turned our face to saint figures. But in the 1920s, it was a comic figures. The God, the Saint Michel, who is drinking in heaven. Now from the beginning of the war, we have such image. It's a Saint Javelina, we called it. If you know, the Javelina, it's a special weapon that helps our soldiers to defend our Ukrainian land. And this image appeared in internet from the beginning of the war. And we know that our soldiers keep this image and ask Saint Javelina, Holy Mary, that who hold the weapon to help and to save them in this struggle with Russian troops. And the next one. And recently we have such image in internet. It's Saint Nicolaus who defends the small town Mykolaiv. I want to say that it's my home town in the south of Ukraine. Now there is my mom, and Saint Nicholas defends his inhabitants from the Russian troops, Russian bombs and rockets with his back. And the last slide. How many such images will appear before the end of this bloody war? And I want to ask you to show the video of our students. I want to thank Yulia that shares the works of her students, her department. and want to show the video of our students. The director is Katerina Lavrinets. Katerina Lavrinets is a student of a third-year course. She's a future Ukrainian women in puppetry arts director, and I want to ask to show her work with our students of the first and second year course.
Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться по избежанию кровопролития и неоправданных жертв. В противном случае по вам будет нанесен бомбово-штурмовой удар. Русский военный корабль летит.
well, you can see a vision of our young puppeteers, update image of Cossack, defender of Ukrainian peoples. And I want to underline that this is a combination of soldier and some elements of angel with his hands and with his flights. And as in the image of Saint Javelina or Saint Nicolaus, at the same time they are warriors, and in the same time they are saints who try to protect our people. Thank you for attention, and glory for Ukraine.
Thank you, Daria, and very much for your wonderful speech, very interesting, and also for this shocking but full of true video you show us at the end. I'm wondering, I'm sure that this video should be shown during our festival in Białystok also in 2 months. Hope we can see there together. I have a few questions for you after this your speech. Hope not only me. I'm wondering, when do the beginnings of the puppet political theater in Ukraine? Because I'm asking this because in Poland we got a person who called Barani Korzuszek, and he was a performer during the Kościuszko uprising, so at the end of the 18th century. And you were talking about the performance from the beginning of the 20th century. Where was the beginning?
I think that the roots of the political and social puppet theater of Ukraine, it's almost at the beginning of vertep puppet theater, because the first part, of course, it's Holy Family and Jesus Christ's birthday, but with political too, with King Hero and so on, his mighty warriors. But the second part with a Cossack as a national hero, it's for my opinion, it's already a political theater, because our national hero Cossack appeared in the second part of drama, of vertep drama, with a song, I will defend all our enemies. And he counts the enemies from the different borders of Ukraine, from south, from north, from east, and from west. That's why I think that the beginning with the appearing of Cossack as a national hero.
Yeah, and I'm also wondering, because just a few moments ago we saw your video of your students, and also Julia showed us the video of her students. And in the last few days during this last month, have you noticed similar theatrical phenomena? I mean, political performances with puppets or without puppets directed against Russia? I'm asking because there are a lot of political memes or political image on the internet now that on the one hand make fun of Putin, and on the other hand give people hope and encouragement. And can you notice something like this now?
I want to say that we are with colleagues. We are in different places of Ukraine. We are everywhere, from colleagues from university and from the theater. We are in touch and talking about ideas how to make it art reflection for these events, and how to involve really politicians and really historical figure in one, maybe not a show, but a performance or action. It's one on the one hand. From another hand, when I was talking about mobility theater, we were talking with our colleagues, maybe we do not know how long will be this war, and maybe we will need a war theatrical mobile teams to go to our boys, to our men, to our army, to to perform them, some performances or some program, national, for example, poetry or singing, to hold their spirits and to give their hope in the future in the two hands. But we are talking about such kind of performance or action using all our rich historical material that we have.
It's normal that when the war starts, just after the soldiers go many cultural events to give them hope. It was also during the Second World War, everywhere in Europe where it was. I'm also wondering, were there any satirical programs with puppets devoted to politics in Ukrainian TV?
Interesting question. I don't know, maybe Yulia know, but I didn't watch, didn't see, didn't catch such kind of programs, but it could be very, very strong because of images and because of possibility of metaphorical language of our art. But
because, you know, we got such examples like Szopka Noworoczna, the New Year's Szopka, and especially during the communist era, Szopka Noworoczna allowed people to laugh at the politicians. In the fact, actors and sportsmen were laughed more, and the politicals performed more often as a choir. But it was very popular even few years ago. It still was in Poland till the tragedy of the plane crashed with all our government. But
I want to say that we do not have such kind of puppetry political program on it in national TV, but we had a animation program. By the way, it was created a few years ago with a team of 95 quartal, a team of our President Zelensky, and it was called Yulia Сказочная Русь, yes, and Fairy Tale Rush, Fairy Tale Rus, Fairy Tale Kyiv Rus, and there were Yanukovych, Putin, and other historical figure, but in not a puppetry, but animated heroes.
And are there any performances made by the Ukrainian puppeteers in the internet? Because it's also very great space to add such a kind of material.
I think that very soon we will see such series or short video or maybe longer video, because honestly this the first 2 or 3 weeks we were, I don't know, we are kidding that we still have on our calendar 24th of February. It's the end of March, but we're still in 24th of February. And I think that Julia said that they restart their educational process online. We try to, I know that today in Kyiv schools begin their online education, and we will try to return normal life and try to reflect on these events in artistic path and way too.
Okay. Are there any questions from the public?
Yeah, I would like to ask about political vertep after Maidan, because as I thought that it was a very good opportunity to have new revolutionary vertep. So Maidan was or not the source of new vertep performances?
Yes, as I said, maybe not in so huge masштаб, but it was in our experience artistic. As I said, our students of the second year's course, they have to prepare the classical vertep with actors, and if student director wants, he or she can make an update version of vertep. It could be not revolutionary, but actually vertep. And our students, they wrote their own scents. It could be with Cossack modern version, or it could be without him, but with historical figures. And we have maybe a 3 version of different kinds of new political and social vertep. And it's interesting that our courses is changes every 4 years. Every 4 years, different students come in, and all of these verteps, they are different because different events and different historical figures. In my time, when I was a student, we made such variant of vertep drama too, and it was in 2007, 2008, a time of economical crisis, if you remember. And crisis is very similar to Ukrainian word krisa, to Russian word krisa, and we created a puppetry image of this crisis that were eating everything and all our country. Yes, we have maybe not in such big masштаб, but in our times there were no so possibility of internet and YouTube. Our students, they are more communicated. They create a Julia students. They create their videos and immediately upload to TikTok and to other sources. I think that you will see, and we will see the new update version of political vertep drama.
And are there any puppets from this political vertep survived till nowadays?
Yes,
because there were some puppets on your presentation, and I wasn't sure if they are from this performance or
yes. We have in our theater, cinema, and musical art museum in Kyiv. We have a strong collection of verteps, different kinds of verteps, and have a revolutionary vertep. And 2 years ago was published a book, A Puppet on the Stage. A Puppet on the Stage, it's an almanac with different kinds of theatrical puppets of Ukraine of different periods. And according in the frame of this project was created a good photo session of this puppet that really right. And I hope that when we meet in Białystok, we will share this book with you, with our colleagues, because the puppets are right and they are preserved. And 3 or 4 years ago, our students even had an opportunity to try manipulate this kind of puppet, but in gloves, in masks, do not destroy them, and try to repeat Свято в раю, Holiday in a Paradise, according to this play that was published in 1924.
Mm-hmm.
Daria, you said about this one of drama, the Holiday in Paradise. Yeah.
Yes.
There are another one of written text of vertep, or this tradition is only like oral tradition, oral theater tradition?
Almost all the repertoire of the theater was not fixed. Only this one drama, due to Pavlo Horbenko, who published even not a book, brochure, very, very short, for 37 or 40 pages, but half of this brochure is this play, Holiday in a Paradise.
So mainly this oral tradition. And
yes.
How you work with your students about, this part of preparing the performance, how they create the text part of vertep?
We are very strict teachers, very strict teachers on the classes of history of puppet theater. We gave them a list of books they have to read before the exam, and they read it in advance and prepared for that rehearsals in a theatrical museum. they have possibility to read this play if they want.
Are there any questions?
We have one information from from Professor Marek Waszkiel. Daria, thanks a lot as well. Many thanks to Julia. I hope one day we will go back to all the questions and problems you proposed. And sorry, I cannot stay till the end of the meeting. My best.
I think we still have only 2 minutes.
Yes.
So truly you are finishing. One more time, thank you, Daria, for your speech. Hope we can meet once again, listen to your proposition of Cossack character about this person in your theater, because this is also very interesting topic to talk about. Also, thank you, Julia, for your previous speech. Dziękuję Ci, Julio, w moim, ale myślę, że we wszystkich imieniu także za twoją wcześniejszą wypowiedź. Nie wiem, jak Marzenna i Artur jeszcze na pewno.
I have a short question to Daria, because the general question is, does it exist any political theater in the contemporary Ukraine? I mean, first of all, the dramatic theater, and I mean first, I mean also the inspirations from the Western Europe, or from the Russian theater, Russian political theater, or Soviet political theater.
I have to say that we poor genre of puppet political theater. Maybe some initiative of some puppeteers, but not on the level of a state puppet theater, because the most puppetry theaters in Ukraine, they are state, and they are mostly oriented to the children auditory, and that's why such kind as political puppet theater we have strong only in our history. But we'll see. We live in a very interesting times. We'll see.
All right.
That's true.
Thank you.
Thank you, Artur.
Marzenna, Arturze, czy coś na zakończenie tego spotkania, tego bloku?
Proszę
No,
Państwa,
dożyliśmy. Cieszmy się, że
we
dożyliśmy.
are very glad that we have online connection, live connection. It was, you know, I think it gives us a hope, because it means that we have contact with you, and I hope these days will be better and safe for you. So we can meet together tomorrow and to hear the next 2 lectures, one based on independent theater, as I think, Ukrainian theater after 1990s, and it will be given by Natalia Shapovalova, and after that we will discuss about the actors technique by Leonidas Sadowski, and we hope to see more inspiration and to know more your Ukrainian theater, because the most important for us is that thanks to your lectures we can recognize and to know your theater in best way. Thank you very much.
Our pleasure, and it's honor for us to share this information about our national culture. Thank you.